How's it going, YouTube? This is Skull, and hello. This is one of my videos that I make from time to time where I just sit down in front of the camera and talk. And yeah, if I look a little red, it's because I'm definitely sunburned. I just got back from vacation, and I feel great, feel so rejuvenated, and I decided to sit down and talk about this video that I've been wanting to discuss for a while now, probably a few months at least. And yeah, just finally thought of everything I wanted to say, and here we are. I just thought that I would bring out Zippy and my 3D printed Cubone to flank me, but I also have some other stuff over here that I'll be showing off when it gets to the relevant point. Got my iPad with my notes. If you make it at all through any portion of the video, then please feel free to comment your thoughts as they come up. Anyway, straight to the point. I'm done collecting games. uh, which is so weird to say because I'm looking around my room right now and I have tons of games. But I'm done collecting them, and there has to be a distinguishment between owning games and collecting games. Everyone owns games. If you're watching this video, I guarantee you own at least a few games. And I've been collecting them since maybe around 2016, maybe even 2015. I don't really remember when I started actually to call myself a video game collector. It's been a while, and when I first started out, it was fun. I mean, if you've been watching my videos on the norm, then you know that I made my monthly video game pickups videos. I've been doing that practically every single month for the past 4 years. It's been great. It's been a whole lot of fun. But not anymore. And there's a bunch of reasons why. But I want to take you back to when I first started collecting games. Back then, there was a few years ago where, for example, I made a video called the $100 Challenge, where I brought a $100 bill to my local retro game store and bought as many games as I could. And it wasn't just buying all the quarter shovelware games, that the ones you could buy for a quarter, and just getting as many of those as I could. I got a wide variety of games for a wide variety of systems, and a lot of them were high quality stuff. Um, and it only cost $100, and that's just so long ago, and it's so hard to believe that that actually was a thing that I did. If I were to do that challenge now, it would be I wouldn't be able to get anywhere near what I got back then. That's for sure. It's just the sad state of the world that we live in. There's a bunch of reasons why that is, but my point is, when I was just going for a sheer quantity of games, including games that I knew that I would want to play, it was a lot easier 5 years ago than it is now. Now, if any game is considered even remotely high quality, it's going to cost a lot of money, a lot more than it used to cost, which means it's not as fun anymore to collect games when those games might cost me a bunch of money. It's just not fun anymore. So where am I at now? Well, I own about 1,500 games, and it's really hard for me to count them because I mean, some things. What do you even count as games? I can make whole videos about that. I have games. I have duplicates of games. I have PC games. I have digital games. If you count digital games, I got easily over 2,000 games. But, I don't count those. I count just stuff that I could put on a shelf and collect us and maybe sell later if I need to, or lend to a friend. Games. And I got 1,500 of those. And that includes over 400 Switch games. Like this, for example, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse for the Switch. A very highly rated game, kind of a rare game, actually, for whatever reason. Shantae just is suddenly stupid popular. And I think that me collecting Switch games is part of the reason why it's just not fun to collect games in general. When I started collecting Switch games, it was ultra fun. I mean, if you watch my videos, then you know that I at one point had, I think I still have, a complete first year of the Switch's release. Every single game that released physically on the Switch in its first year, I own physically, and I own hundreds of games beyond that. But when I started collecting Switch games, I was kind of expecting the Switch to perform like the Wii U. The Wii U ended up with exactly 165 games in North America. Okay, the Switch passed that within its first 15 months of release. I wasn't expecting that. No one was expecting that. The Switch now has over 1,000 games physically released for it. It's on track to potentially have the largest game library of any system. PS2 right now has almost exactly 2,500 games. I wouldn't be surprised if the Switch passes that. How am I supposed to collect that if I started out as a completionist? At some point I just looked at my list of games that I was missing, and I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to afford to pick up all of these, especially some that I'm missing, like Atelier, which is like a $100 game. There's tons of games that I'm missing, um after collecting for the Switch for a few years, I sort of realized part of the problem was limited run games. They released this, and I'm proud to own the first 50 games that they released on the Switch, but they've released 50 games on the Switch. They've released 100 games for the Switch now, and that's just in their numbered releases, not to mention their distributed titles, which are unnumbered, not to mention the other dozen companies out there that are releasing games physically for the Switch as well. How is anyone supposed to keep up with all of that, much less afford all of that? It's just made it like, why? Why does there need to be that many games released? And I get it, I love physical releases, especially for indie games, because those deserve to be preserved and loved forever. I am owning a copy of the game that will never go away from the digital store because it'll be on my shelf, I love the appeal of physical games. But there's 100 games released for the Switch so far that got a release for a month and then will never be available again. And it's becoming more and more common, especially from LRG, to release indie games that should get a retail release but don't. They are available only for a month on LRG's website, and if you don't buy it, tough luck. Maybe it'll be a bit cheaper down the road. Maybe it'll be $500 down the road. Are you willing to take that gamble? I'm not. Which is why I've sort of given up. I went from collecting every Switch game to just trying to go after subsets, like based off of year or based off of genre. Now I'm just to the point where I don't care. Like, I own 400 Switch games, and guess what? In the past 2 months, I've been selling off some of my more valuable Switch games. I don't care enough to keep them. I don't even remember what most of them are. I've sold off my Bayonetta Climax Edition. That's all I remember for sure. But I was just browsing my shelf like, okay, that's a $100 game. I'd rather sell that. I'd rather get the money because I know I'm never going to play it, and if I'm never going to complete my Switch collection anyway, what's the point, right? That's just where I've fallen down to right now in my mindset. And that's just for Switch games. That's just for Switch games. That's all I've talked about so far. Okay, fair enough. But what's to stop me from collecting retro games? Well, have you seen the prices for them now? The pandemic is partly to blame, but I think mostly it's just the fact that they're old, they're nostalgic. People get into old stuff. It's been a thing forever. There's always like antiques and retro stuff. That's always going to be popular. So when I hold a copy of The Legend of Zelda in my hand, I don't even remember what I bought this for, but I didn't buy it for what it goes for now. Not to mention all those other games. Even the most common NES games are going for like $30-$40. When I was getting into this hobby, you can get them for $3 or $5. You could get a Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt for $10. In fact, I did. Now they're like $30-$40. I mean, I don't take that for as gospel or anything because I haven't actually looked up eBay prices, but you get the idea. It just isn't worth it for me anymore to get old games because they're all expensive. NES games, Master System games, Genesis games, TurboGrafx games, although those have always been expensive, so whatever. Even the common PlayStation games, even the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 shovelware games are getting to be way more expensive than they ever should be. That's not fun. It used to be that I could go to a retro game store, and buy just a bulk lot of games for like $25-$30, maybe $50 if I felt like splurging a little. Now $50 might buy me 5 games if I'm lucky. It's just I it's just not fun to know that the old games are only going to get more expensive for the exact same experience. At that point, I'd rather just dump $200 on an EverDrive. I do care about gaming on original hardware. I need to make that clear. I've spent a lot of money and time to make my room accessible so that I have literally like 30 consoles set up to go at a moment's notice with just the press of a few buttons. And it's great. It's great to play on the real system with a real controller on a real TV. No emulation for me. I'm not an emulator guy. I love the real system, but honestly, EverDrives make more sense now. I'd rather dump $200 for an NES EverDrive that can play every game ever played and then some, than to dump $200 on a single NES game that I don't know if I'm ever going to play. And that's part of my problem is I've just sort of realized I'm never going to play most of these games. Of the 1,500 games I have, I've maybe played, no exaggeration, maybe 100, maybe 150. For any significant length of time, I know I've played maybe only 50 games. And you know, we always make the joke that game collectors never play their games. Well, I want to, I just never feel like it. I have so many games that I have picked up knowing that, oh, this is a good game, I should play it someday. You know, tons of Final Fantasy games, Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo, Donkey Kong Country, you know, I'm thinking mostly of Super Nintendo right now, I guess, but you get the idea. Tons of games I've picked up because I know they're good games and I know I'll want to play them someday. I just never feel like it. And that's just for games that I've picked up knowing that they're good. Forget the games that I've never heard of, but I've heard that they're good, that I know nothing about. And it's just like, my passion isn't there anymore. It's the exact same feeling I got when I got out of collecting Pokemon cards, if you remember that, from 5 years ago now. Wow. Where I just like, you know what? It's not fun anymore. And I just want to get money, whatever money I can, and just get it out of my life. And part of that, I think, is also because I'm planning on moving next year, and I'm trying to downsize my collection because wherever we're going to move, it's going to be smaller than where we live now. So maybe that's part of it, but I really think it's mostly just, I just view these games as not junk, but definitely clutter. My game collection feels like clutter right now, and I just want to downsize, which definitely means I don't want to buy anything new. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've actually been selling off my more valuable games. I owned Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut on the N64. I sold that and used the money to buy a bunch of Pokemon games that I was missing. That's where my passion is right now, collecting Pokemon games. I mean, again, if you've been paying attention to my channel, you should know that. But I own every single main series game complete in box you can see over here. I own all but 12 of the spin-offs complete in box, and my collection's almost complete. And that's complete in box. That's not just loose cartridge or loose disc or whatever. Those are hard to get, and they're only getting more expensive. And I figure if I have a $200 game on my shelf that I don't care about, why not just sell it on eBay and use that money to buy a Pokemon game that I know I will care about, that very likely I won't want to get rid of. So that's what I've been doing for the past 2 months or so, and what I'll probably continue to do, at least until I finish my Pokemon collection. But, you know, there's other things that I want to collect. For example, Amiibo. I'm lucky and proud to own every single Amiibo ever made, ever released for retail anyway. I do not own the Monster Hunter trophies. Don't be silly. But I own every single retail Amiibo, and I want to keep that collection, and I want to keep up with that collection. And they made it really easy by only releasing a few Amiibo a year for the past few years. See, I care about collecting Amiibo because because I already own everything, so there's not anything to worry about with getting new ones. I want to collect Pokemon CDs and film soundtracks. There's a bunch of variety of CDs that I want, but I've been going after Pokemon CDs now for about a month when I realized that there's only 12 in North America, 15 if you count singles, but tons in Japan, most of them undocumented. Like Project Music on Bulbapedia is one of the largest stub lists on the whole site. And I care about this. I care about collecting these CDs and getting them and playing them. Just that's where my passion is. And my passion is in making things like my arcade cabinet or my 3D printed Cubone, which is why I brought it out here. You see this? You see, I made this. And it didn't cost that much money, obviously 3D printed and primed and painted and sanding and Bondo and all that. But I made this. And I care that I made this, and I have more Pokemon that I'm making right now. It's just out of shot below the camera, the next one I'm making. But you see, that's what I'm passionate about, is making things with my hands and collecting things that don't cost as much. I mean, you could see just in frame on your right side of your screen that I have a bunch of iPods and iPhones and stuff. I'm using an iPad to read my notes, and I'm using an iPhone 3GS to keep a timer on my camera. So those are way cheaper than games. Can you believe that this 3GS cost me $10? You can't get games for $10 anymore. It's just so silly. But what I'm passionate about is a lot cheaper, which my wife likes, and it's a lot more accessible. And especially with things that I can make, I have a lot of creativity involved. That's what I care about. That's what I'm passionate about. And as far as video games goes, I am passionate about specific games. Breath of the Wild I love. I can't wait to get the sequel. My Pokemon collection that I brought up, and I love playing Final Fantasy games. And there are games that I care a lot about. But it just struck me that I own one physical PlayStation 5 game, and I'm happy with that. When I got my PS4, the first thing I did was I went to GameStop and I got like 20 games just to say that I owned 20 PS4 games. My mentality has really shifted, and now I'm happy with a lot less. Which I guess isn't a bad thing, just how I've changed over time. I'll tell you something that I am very happy to own, though. This is the very first game I ever bought, this very cartridge. I got this copy of Pokemon Trading Card Game for the Game Boy Color, completely new, for $10 from Blockbuster in 2001. And I still own it. And eventually I'll need to get the game again, complete in box for my collection. But you know what? I'm never getting rid of this. This was my very first video game that I bought, that I own. And that's what I care about, the sentimentality of stuff. It's definitely something to brag about, to say that I own 1,500 games, that I own the first 50 LRG Switch games, that I own, I've owned at one point or another the rarest game for something like 10 systems. And you know what? I would give it all away just to keep this. I'm a sentimental person. And there's no sentimental value in the vast majority of the games that I have. And I really don't have much of a sentimental incentive to just keep buying more and more games. At this point, I have a really nice library for all of my systems. If I ever feel like sitting down and playing a system, I have a nice selection of games to play. And I've sort of realized that I care more about the systems than the games on the systems for the most part. I like the look of PlayStation 1 games because they're all blocky and nostalgic. I like the look of Atari 2600 games because they look so primitive, like it's a miracle they're even showing up on the screen. I love the look of PlayStation 5 games because it's the new gen, it's cutting edge technology. I like the look of games more than the games themselves usually. There are plenty of exceptions, of course, but in general, if I want to sit down and play games, it's not the games I want to play, it's the system. And I have plenty of games for each of my systems, so I don't really see the need to get any more. Especially when, in conclusion, because limited run games, or limited printing in general, on new systems, and sky-high, ridiculous prices for old systems, collecting games just isn't fun anymore. I'm done collecting games. I will keep playing games. I will definitely keep my library of games for each of my systems, but I am no longer going to consider myself a video game collector. I will definitely keep buying games I care about. Like I said, the Breath of the Wild sequel, of course, Splatoon 3, any new Pokemon game that comes out. And there will probably be a few surprises along the way that I'll look at and say, hey, I want to pick that up. But as far as just collecting games for the sake of collecting games, I'm done. I'm done, and that's all I needed to say. That's all I wanted to say. But I want to hear what you have to say. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know if there's any fellow game collectors out there, if you are going to keep collecting games, and I'd love to know why, or if any of you feel the same way I do, because, man, it's hard to believe I'm the only one who feels this way, but I'd love to hear everyone's opinions. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I should have a whole lot of new videos coming out, including a Nuzlocke series for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl next month. Hope everyone has enjoyed the video. Sorry that it took so long. And, yeah. Have a good day. Bye.